Good evening and welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting on Monday, April 3rd, 2023. We'll open the meeting at 6:02. Can I get a roll call, Beth?
Select Chair, Mr. Coy.
Here?
Select Vice Chair, Mr. DeRoche.
Here.
Selectman, Mr. Britton.
Here.
Selectman, Mr. Gifford.
Here.
Selectwoman, Ms. Bergeron.
Here.
And note for the record, we have Town Manager, Mr. Colby here. And tonight, joining us, we have Town Moderator, Mr. Harb, Assistant Town Moderator, Mr. Major, and Town Clerk, Mrs. Fowler.
All right. You can all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Bob and Norm, you want to lead us, please?
Please join with me on the pledge to glory. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Doesn't look like there's anyone here for public comment. So we'll get into the agenda. First up, Bob, Norm, Martha for the go over the election process, kind of review everything where we had a new location this year, and I think it's always a good thing to review.
Ms. Fowler has the smaller chair because she says she has the least to say of the three of us. Go figure. Good evening. My name is Bob Harb. I'm your town moderator. Norm Major and I, my assistant, we're happy to be here. Talk about the election. The first thing I'd like to mention, because this has been asked to me afterwards, because of the weather, how come we didn't postpone the election? The first thing that is important to know, we are still in the Timberlane Regional District. The law changed last year. We have 4 towns in the Timberlane Regional District. No matter what a particular town votes, the town moderators have to get together and take a vote based upon their town. It takes a majority of the 4 towns to postpone an election. This last time, all 4 towns voted to have the election. So notwithstanding, even if Plaistow had voted to postpone, we would not legally be able to do so. It's a majority of the vote. A tie is a tie, and the election goes on. This was a new law passed a few years ago. Norm and I were in the House at the time, and we have to look at the National Weather Service. It's not the state that dictates it. It's the code from the National Weather Service on the kind of weather we have. So that's why we had the election. I did note that our normal electorate numbers were not there. We had about 2/3 of what we normally have came out. So it wasn't exceptionally low, but it was lower than normal. I think as a facility, those of us sitting here in front of you, we like the facility. It worked out for the Martha, the clerk, the checklist, supervisors of the checklist, the moderators, and the selectmen that helped. I think it's a good facility. I want to thank the Fish and Game and John for all that they did to make us feel welcome there, and it worked out good. We had 3 officers on duty. One inside, one in the parking lot, and for most of the time, but probably not all the time, someone was on Main Street. I like to plan in the future. My concern for the presidential election is, based upon us having about 600 and something people that came to vote, at the presidential, we have about 4,500 people that come to vote. So I think the parking lot will handle it. Hopefully in November, there's no snow, so we won't have all that slush that Selectman Gifford had to keep pushing around. But I'm concerned about Main Street and 4,500 cars or so going in and out. We'll work with our safety officials, the police, and see what we can do. It's kind of like not a lot we can do. They have to come in, they have to go out, and it's a narrow road. So traffic may be delayed. You might have a backup. So hopefully people spread out when they come, but it's going to be a lot of people coming for the presidential. So, but that's a few years down the road. So I think we got enough time to plan for it. I did have some concerns mentioned to me about the acoustics in the room. So we're going to address that. You know, how do we set up the voting booths? Can we move them one side or the other side? If most of you will remember, when we were voting at the garage, it's quite a high ceiling. So sound would go up and you wouldn't hear it that much. But because these are low ceilings and we're in a confined room, sound was echoing. So we're going to make an effort to see what we can do about that. I'm happy to say we had no voter day registrations who didn't bring their IDs, because there's a new law about that. And I was very happy I didn't have to follow the new law. And there's even some rumor about trying to undo the law. It's quite complicated and too complicated for me to mention and go through all the procedure. But the Secretary of State had told me he didn't think that this would be a frequent occasion that last minute registrations to vote didn't have a driver's license. And he was right in Plaistow. We had quite a few registrations that day and everybody brought their driver's license, first-time registrations. So I'm happy with the results of the new facility. We would have liked to have seen a little more people there, but I think we are now learning how to do it. And I remember when we were before you before, I didn't hear any complaints, although afterwards maybe somebody might say something to you. Nobody complained about the hours, 7 to 7. We appreciated that. That gave us that extra hour to really work and not have to be there too much. Norm still kept track of all the numbers. So, and I thank the voters for voting to keep the 7 for 7 so we can do that at the upcoming elections. I think 12 hours, and Norm and I had polled all the other towns. That's 12-hour stretch is pretty much what everybody else does. So I was happy with that. And I think that concludes what I'd like to say. Norm, I know, had a few words to mention. Norm?
Thank you, Bob. Just to give you an idea of the town election versus all the other elections, the town election is the most difficult election. Even though we only had 620 people, you multiply that by 7, that means over 4,200 pieces of paper had to go in the machine. Bob mentioned the presidential. Presidential will probably have about 4,300 people come out to vote. That's the same amount of ballots as we had when we only had 620 people voted. So I think we can handle it. Plus, at a town election, the total number of articles with the town and the schools, like about 54 articles. And you're also voting for about 16 different positions, elected positions. So it's a very complex ballot. Your presidential election, you'll just have one sheet, and it'll be maybe a lot of people running for the president, but there's not that many positions. So it should be relatively quick. I think what we want to be able to do is to make sure that on the presidential election, which is going to be in November, and there's a chance that the weather may not be cooperating, if we could maybe figure on snaking the people inside where they check in, keep them out of the bad weather. But it had no problem this last time. Everybody was able to get inside at the check-in. I think things went well. There's always room for improvement. I think we've learned a lot, so the next time will be better. 5 elections next year.
We'll be busy. Martha, do you want to say anything?
No, 4 elections next year. Presidential, town, primary, and state, 4 elections next year.
Oh, right, 4 elections, and then there's the deliberative session. Sorry about that.
That's better than 5.
Yeah, 4 elections. I don't have much to add. I thought it went well. We could jockey our positions between my desk and where the supervisors of the checklist sat, to keep everybody's temperature nice. That was the only thing I heard complaints about from the workers, but other than that, I thought it went very well. And Mr. Gifford, you were a gracious host for the fishing game. That was very, very well done.
But we're here to answer any other questions you might have, but
The
we,
only thing I know, you had a few people asked why we moved it from the highway garage. And I think if you looked at the snowstorm, that kind of answered the question.
You got
That we were lucky. Could you imagine if we had it over at the highway garage and Danny and his crew in that snowstorm had to try to get in there to fix things and repair it? Just, it would have been a nightmare. So I think the place worked really well.
It's a 3-day thing for them.
Right.
It's the day before, it's the election, and the day after,
Yeah.
for them to get their continuity of operations back in line. So this would have been a complete nightmare this
Yeah,
year.
I thought it worked well. You had paved parking, the lighting was better. In my opinion. Anyone else have anything?
It was, I think it worked out just great. I can't, and we only really used a fraction of the parking this time. So even with the presidential election, I think we'll be doing good, because really, we didn't park very far up. You still had, it looked like a third or a half of the parking lot still available at any one time.
Right, and the turnaround will be faster, as you stated. I mean, you're voting, you're not reading warrant article after warrant article as well. We'll work on signage to bring that up. Some people did mention, their first time there, the signage wasn't appropriate, so we can take care of that. And I've looked into some sound barriers for the front so that we can almost isolate where they walk in, and maybe our fellow selectmen could keep our voices down a little bit more.
I don't know if it was that guy hawking the books on the corner, but he did a great job. He sold them all for the great price. Got rid of them. It was a good thing to try, as we said, and I think it succeeded. So as Norm said, we'll just look for a few of those tweaks to polish it up, and we've got time to work on it.
The biggest tweak is going to be at the intersection of May Ray and Main Street.
So
We shouldn't be paying for offices that aren't up there helping move the traffic directly.
No, I agree.
That's
do we have an
big-
officer out there directing traffic?
There was an officer. I can't say that they were there 24/7, because I had some comments that they had taken a break and were in the parking lot. But we had people out there, like my wife came and said she saw him on Main Street. Other people said, oh yeah, I saw him on Main Street. Whether they were out of the car or not, I can tell you because I was inside. But they were functioning on Main Street. What the chief had told me, or the captain, that we didn't have enough of our own people there. As everybody's short staffed, so isn't the police department. So a lot of times the person on Main Street was an out-of-town policeman that maybe is not familiar with our traffic flow and how things work. So maybe the next time we can put the out-of-town guy inside instead of on Main Street, because I think our officers have more experience with Main Street, but they were out there. I just can't tell you they were there every minute, but they were there.
And given the weather too, they were handling multiple calls with people off the road, and so it just was a perfect storm, so to speak, of different things.
Well, it was a good test,
Yeah.
Jay. It was a
It
good
was a good
test.
That's what
test.
you
You know?
want. You want a test like that.
Well, it was a good test under the most adverse conditions,
And we also had the left hook of the ballots that, the absentee ballots that were made available. I know that was a difficult situation we had to deal with too. So
I jumped from 39, I think I had 39 requested on Thursday when I left the office, and I took in about another 30-something on Monday, which was a ringer for my office because I don't have the help I used to have. So at least the town of Plaistow didn't run out of absentee ballots. I heard Danville and Atkinson ran out of absentee ballots, and the clerks were copying ballots, and those ballots had to be hand counted at the end of the night. when I was sending my results into the school, I saw an email come through from Atkinson at 10:30, and she was still hand counting her ballots because of her multitude of absentee ballots that she had.
Question was asked me, how come we didn't better advertise in advance about getting absentee ballots on Monday? The difficulty, or the catch-22 is, and this is another new law that just went into effect this year, that until Monday, when the weather is announced, they can't get a ballot and check the box because of weather. So they got to wait. And in the event it changes and they change the weather forecast, we can't tell people, come get your ballot on Monday, and then they change and say, oh, it's no longer a weather issue, so you can go to the polls, because they're all going to say, well, you told me I could go on Monday. So Martha and I were talking on Friday, geez, what do? We need to tell people, but it wasn't set till Monday that they actually, for the reason of the weather, could pick it up. Atkinson, I'm told, had around 200 people on Monday getting a ballot approximately.
Wow.
So they had like 400 absentee ballots, which is outrageous. It's good people voting, but for the clerks to be hit with 200 apps at the last minute. So I think we were lucky that we didn't have that many. But that's why, if the people watching say, well, why don't you tell me ahead of time? Because we really can't, other than maybe, and I don't like to mislead the public. Oh, gee, you can get your ballot on Monday. We didn't know that till Monday. On Monday, Martha posted it. We posted it as many places as we could due to the weather decision at the last minute. You could come get your ballots. So in the future, hopefully people will know that you just got to wait till Monday. And if it's bad, you can get an absentee ballot on Monday.
Very good.
Anybody have anything else? I think we're good.
Great
All right,
job.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you. And if I might take a moment, not about this, but you asked about public comment, but I appreciate the select board allowing the Plaistow Exchange Club to put those pinwheels out. They're flying like crazy in
They
this
are.
wind.
Oh, I'm
So
surprised they're still on the ground
I think it
yesterday.
came out nice going in the front, and I want to thank you for that. And
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay, for picking up the sign that fell down. We'll get that reestablished. But thank you very much. And Mondays, you may wonder, how come this guy's wearing a blue shirt and a blue tie? Mondays is Blue Mondays through the month of April. We ask people, in respect for prevention of child abuse, if you wear blue on Mondays as a sign. So maybe next week you guys might remember, wear blue on
We'll
Monday.
do that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
They got the memo. Thank you. So.
Yeah, we got it.
We got the yeah,
All
they
right.
got it.
You got the message. They got the message.
I got blue pants on.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks,
Thank
Bob.
you.
Good night.
Underwear. Underwear is.
All right, we want to,
Water update,
yeah, we want to add one item to the agenda that wasn't there, a water update.
or at least take the town manager / potable water update out of sequence, and we can discuss water.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll move that up. I see Charlie's here.
Yes.
Once he stops talking over there. Charlie, why don't you come on up?
I asked Charlie to be here just in case to answer any questions. Last week to update the board and the like, we did, as expected, we heard from the state that we will be sending out another violation notice for the HAA 5. Not unexpected because of the rolling average over the 4 quarters. Again, because of the October being as high as it is, that means at the end of the quarter, we are still above that limit of 60 when we average the quarters. So therefore, we will be sending out, we're going to work on that notice this coming week. That notice will go out to everybody of record, the users on the system, anybody that's new with applications and the like. But we'll see to it that we get that notice out and also published on the website. So that having been said, over the last couple of weeks, we have received some test results back. The results of March 10th were promising the results of March 16th, I'd say we took a half a step back, and maybe not even that. The March 16th test results, all of them were below the 60 limit, except for the Sweet Hill tank, which was at a 62.7. So just a little bit above. But the East Road and then also the other households that we've been testing, they were all under 60. So we're currently waiting on the 323 results. And I don't know, I didn't ask you, do we do any the 30th or do we decide to skip a week and do this week? But
As I recall, I think all we did on the 30th was, Sweet Hill Tank. and
Okay.
Possibly East Road. I'll have to confirm that. But we did not, I don't believe we did the houses on the 30th.
Okay.
Do we have any numbers on that yet, on the 30th?
No, and we also don't, what was the date?
Not on the
before that?
23rd. We just got the ones in from the 16th tests.
So maybe hopefully the end of this week, we might see the,
Yeah, it's been a little sporadic. Some results came back in a week or less, and then there were some that took pretty much every bit
Pretty
of the
much,
2
yeah.
weeks.
If not 15 days. So,
I suspect some of that's due to the snowstorms we had affecting some shipping. These samples do get sent out to a third-party lab, subcontracted lab, so that's probably why.
all right. Anyone have questions to start?
The only question I have is what's driving the numbers at the tank, do you think? I mean, we've been obviously circulating enough water at this point.
So we're tracking the numbers as they come into the Atkinson system from Salem, and then as they get to Plaistow. And what we're seeing is the contact time between when the water comes from Salem and gets to Plaistow. We're seeing an increase of about 15 to 20 parts on the HA5, which is what we're primarily concerned with. So the water gets to East Road, it's at 40-ish, and it's essentially contact time. So
Yep.
the water contains the organics coming from mostly Salem, and as the water makes its way, throughout the system up to the tank, to the customers, the longer contact time, the more that those DBPs have to form, the more time. So the HAA5 numbers we're seeing are directly related to water age. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but one of the things we noticed is February's flushing was a little bit down in terms of the amount of water that we flushed. And that was for a few different reasons. We had a neighbor ask about some of the water coming off the berm. And so the readings we have, the most recent readings we have that indicated the tank was 62.7. I suspect that that's slightly elevated due to the fact that February was flushed a little bit less than it was in, say, March. And now that we have the weather turning, we're continuing to flush. Optimistic that the next round of samples come back will be at or below that 60.
How much are we flushing?
So right now we're averaging about 20 to 30,000 gallons a day flushing. And it doesn't happen every day. We typically flush, a few times a week. So we'll flush a couple 100,000 gallons at
That's a lot
time.
of water.
Yeah, it's a good amount of water. Yep.
My concern with that is if you, a couple 100,000 gallons a week, you're saying?
Yes.
A month.
A month.
I mean, the February flushing was less than 100,000. The January, I think primarily too, because of the cold weather. The January one was closer, I think, to 300,000, if I'm not mistaken.
For the total amount flushed.
Total amount for the month. Yep.
Yeah. What we're seeing is, I think the ideal amount of flushing is almost the same as the usage that the customers are consuming, which is about 25 to 30,000 gallons per day.
So in real numbers, what that means is that 50% of the water we take in is non-billable water.
Yeah. Right.
It could be as high as that, correct?
That to me is non-acceptable.
Yep.
And we can't afford to give away 50% of our water.
Yeah. So the other option, which we're looking at right now, is changing the disinfection process.
Yeah.
We're actually meeting tomorrow to discuss the actual mechanics of doing it at the pump house with town's engineer and with the representative for the chemical feed equipment.
And what would you expect to to accomplish by doing that, by changing it?
So if we go to chloramination, which is essentially just using chlorine, mixing it with ammonia, so you end up with a disinfection residual of monochloramine. The major benefit to going to a monochloramine is whatever the disinfection byproduct levels are at the East Road station, they're essentially going to stay that way because the monochloramine does not allow the DBPs to continue to form where chlorine does. So if the levels are coming into East Road at 40 or 45, they're essentially going to stay at 40 or 45.
Injected at East Road?
Correct. Yep. Like anything, there's pros and cons. I do think that we're still going to be flushing a fair amount of water. There's some long dead ends that are 12-inch lines, and we won't know until we have the residual out into the system, but we'll need to track it and make sure that that residual is holding so that we're not getting water out into the system that's not properly protected from.
And at any point in time, do we think the flushing, those numbers will come down instead of doing like 100,000 gallons a week?
If we end up going to the monochloramine disinfection process, I'm cautiously optimistic that we'd see the flushing come down. At that point, we'd really only be flushing for an issue of dirty water, something like that. Or if we had a long dead end that needed to be turned over so that that residual doesn't die off. We won't know how much we're flushing until we're in it, but I suspect it would be less because right now we are flushing a lot of water to keep the system fresh.
Anyone else?
And just assume that if we get more usage, we flush less, right?
Correct. Yeah, and that's a big part of it. I know there's a number of people that are either connecting or interested in connecting this year, and the more people that connect, the quicker that this will come down from the flushing numbers perspective.
Okay.
Jay, Tammy, any questions right there? Greg, you get more?
I'm all set.
Charlie, anything else you wanted to add or anything?
No, I don't think so. The only thing that does come to mind is if we do go to a chlorination process, we'll want to talk with Greg and the board members. There will be a notice that we'll want to just get out there, letting the consumers know what we're doing, why we're doing it.
When would you be thinking about possibly making that change?
I think if we were to do it, it would be really beneficial to do it before the temperatures get too warm. One thing I'm concerned about is going into a really warm season, trying to get the residual to maintain. What we found is, especially in Plaistow, a lot of the water lines are underneath the paved surfaces. And some of the water, it was amazing last fall when we were flushing, some of the water was hot as it was coming out of the hydrants and whatnot. It was 70 some odd degrees. So granted, the water was sitting, it had time for that temperature to really get into the water. So I really would like to start sometime in April if we were to make the decision so that we have a month or two to really get everything dialed in.
So you want to start in April, you're there now.
Yep.
Well, what's the cost?
So there's really no cost. The station at East Road is all set up to do the monochloramine treatment process. Essentially, it's just one extra chemical feed pump setup. So we'll have to maintain that chemical.
How about the cost of the chemical?
The amount of ammonia that you're going to use is almost negligible.
Okay.
We're probably talking about in the hundreds of dollars a year.
Oh, okay.
If we were to switch over to that process, is this the same process that Salem had used?
So Salem is currently on monochloramines as a disinfection process.
And they switched from chlorine to monochloramine.
In the early 2000s, they made the switch.
Okay.
They were having DBP issues themselves. They looked into it. They made the switch. And then more recently, they did what's called a burn. They call it a conversion. Essentially, what you do is you put enough chlorine into the system that you burn off all the basically everything in the water, and then what comes out of it is a free chlorine residual, which is what the town has here now. So what we'd be looking to do is add the ammonia and make what's called monochloramine. It does have some benefits. If you do read up on it, taste and odor complaints are typically a bit less. There are some things to be mindful of, and this would be in any literature that would go out. Fish tanks, aquariums, things like that. People that are adding water to them want to be mindful that this water does have a chloramine residual, as that can negatively impact aquatic life. And aside from that, I think the other one is dialysis machines. I believe, and I'm not an expert by any means on dialysis machines, but my understanding is every machine comes with a filter that is compatible with monochloramine. A lot of big cities are on monochloramine. So that is a concern, but I think that's a concern that 30 or 40 years ago was a valid concern. And I think now that technology's caught up, I don't think that that's something that people really have to deal with, but nevertheless, they still should be notified.
So will we be the same system as Salem,
In terms of
adding chlorine?
when you add the chlorine and the ammonia, you'll be the same treatment process as Salem at that point.
Okay, so we're not cross contamination from one to the other or different products. Okay.
Can I ask Charlie, and not if you haven't decided, what is Hampstead area? Are you going to keep with the chlorine, or are you going to do the same?
So the thought right now is we're going to keep with chlorine. If that were the driving factor, we would have to reconsider. Initially, Hampstead was told that monochloramine was the way to go. We started the system up, and almost instantly we realized we just couldn't keep the residual. It just was disappearing. Long story short, it ended up being due to nitrification. Basically, there was nitrite in the water, and not to get too off topic here, but nitrite eats the residual. It eats up the chlorine. The monochloramine. So we were unable to maintain a residual. And the one thing we don't want to do is have a water system where we can't have safe disinfectant out into the extents. The good news about Plaistow is we've already essentially burnt the water where it's coming in from Salem and Atkinson. We're hitting it with enough chlorine. We're essentially doing a burn. So you're not going to have to worry about the same types of things that we had to worry about when we were going in 2020 from Salem to Atkinson. I really don't think we're going to have nearly the issues that we did, because we are free chlorine through Atkinson. So the free chlorine actually eats up the nitrites. So by the time it gets to East Road, there'll be zero nitrites. So we'll be starting fresh.
So if you make the changes, you're not expecting to see these numbers spike or anything like that?
No, the numbers that we've been talking about here, the DBP numbers, will go down. They will absolutely go down from what they are.
And we actually have a question into the state that if we do switch the disinfection process, of whether we can bypass further notifications with the HAA 5 if we've completely switched, and we're waiting for an answer on the state. It's got them thinking, right?
Yeah.
Anyways.
Then at the worst, even if they don't, you can still keep posting the results as we get them, right?
Yeah.
Right on the town website.
Do you think it's beneficial for every town to be following the same, like the monochlorine? Wouldn't it be better for all of us to be all doing the same thing?
It would be in a perfect world. Theoretically, that's what everybody hoped would happen.
Right.
And then we went to monochloramine. We could not maintain a residual due to the nitrification. And I actually think it's a better situation for us in Atkinson to be the outlier and not be on monochloramine, because what would happen is if we could not maintain a residual in Atkinson, there's no way we could in Plaistow. We could touch the water up at East Road. It would get a little better into the system. But if that nitrification event is already happening, once it takes hold, it's it's out of the bag. You really, the only way to fix it is flushing, more flushing, and the temperature's dropping. So
you don't think that would be the case here in Plastow if we decided to go that route?
no, primarily because we're I don't know if killing off is probably not the best way of describing it, but we're removing all the nitrites from the water at the Atkinson town line.
Okay.
So when it gets to Plastow, you're starting with the best scenario that you could.
Okay.
So if there's any nitrification in Plastow, it's going to occur in the system on its own. There'll be nothing that came from, upstream.
So it's Hampstead area water company recommending that we should go with this.
We're strongly
solution.
considering it. Yeah, we're talking with Gene with Underwood tomorrow. We're going to meet with some of the equipment reps, and that's actually for another reason. But the timing is beneficial that everybody will be there. So I think what'll happen is we'll meet on site tomorrow, and then I'll get with Greg, and if we think that's the best course of action, we'll summarize it, and we can certainly get the notice out, and then the actual conversion process should be fairly simple.
Okay.
Now that we've had as much hands-on operation of the system, it should be pretty easy to. Basically, we're going to get the old chlorinated water out as fast as possible, get the chlorinated water in.
Okay. And who signs off on this? Is it you guys, or do we as a town need to sign off on the conversion?
There's no formal sign-off that I'm aware of. The one thing that would have to happen is DES would just have to be aware of the proposed switch and disinfection process, and that's likely as simple as an email, just letting everybody know here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it. I did speak with Mike Unger, the head engineer at DES in the water division today, and he's generally on board too. We talked basically about what we talked about here tonight, and I hate to stay with the chlorine, and we're below the numbers today, but I hate to flirt with the numbers the whole year, and give people that uneasiness.
Yeah.
Right.
So if we go with the monochloramine disinfection process, we essentially know the DBPs are no longer an issue. At that point, it's just making sure that the water quality's good, that we're maintaining a residual out in the system.
It's a no-brainer.
It seems it,
Yeah.
but see how the meeting goes tomorrow, I guess, right?
Yeah, I'm not, unless Underwood or somebody says, hey, I think it's a bad idea for these reasons. I think we're leaning that direction quite a bit. So.
Okay, it sounds like the way you're kind of talking.
Yeah. I mean, just hearing myself talk, and I think it makes the most sense at this point. I think we're at a time where if we're going to do it, it makes a lot of sense to do it before we get into the really hot temperatures.
Yeah, and that's what Salem's doing, right?
That's what Manchester and Salem does right now.
And that's what's flowing this way.
Yes,
Right.
a good chunk of it.
So it's kind of consistent is what it would be. More consistency. All right, anything else?
Nope.
All right, I think that's it, Charlie, unless you have anything else.
Thank you very much.
All right,
Thank you for
Have a
coming
good
in,
night.
Charlie.
Time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Charlie.
Do you want me to stick around, or am I?
All right. Next up, review the board committee assignments that we went over last week. Make sure everyone agrees with it. If anybody wants to make any changes, now's the time before we publish it. We can just review right from the top. So BudCom, the way we have it set up, it's Jay's the rep, Darryl will be the alternate. CIP will be Jay and myself. Tammy's the alternate there. For conservation, Tammy will be the rep. Darryl will be the alternate. Highway safety, John the rep. Tammy the alternate. Energy, John the rep. Jay the alternate. Planning, I'll be the rep. Jay will be the alternate. Recreation, John will be the rep. I'm the alternate. Elder Affairs, Tammy's the rep. Darrell's the alternate. REDC, That's Tim Moore will be the rep, Jay will be the alternate. Town report will be Jay and Daryl, and Tammy will be the alternate. Old Home Day, John will be the rep, Tammy's the alternate. Historical Society, John will be the rep, I'm the alternate there. Hazmat will be John, Tammy's the alternate, and John Sherman for the CIP and Timberlane. Did everyone good with that?
Perfect.
I'm good with
Excuse
that.
me, Mr. Chair. I found out earlier today that the Timberlane CIP has not really been meeting, so it's kind of a non-committee at this point.
Well, it's really a Timberlane thing, really, more than the town thing, anyways. Thank you. All right, moving along. Everyone should have in their folder the public notice for the town of Plastow for mosquito control. You have to read the note. The mosquito control program begins the week of April 10th, 2023 in the town of Plastow. Crews from Dragon Mosquito Control will be checking swamps, marshes, woodland pools, ditches, catch basins, storm drains, and other shallow stagnant water for mosquito larvae. When mosquito larvae are found, treatment may occur using one or more of the following insecticides. And this will be a fun part. Alticid, Vectobac 12AS, 4-star BTI CRG, Natula, BVA2, mosquito larvicide oil, Sunspray MLO. There is no schedule at this time to conduct emergency spraying for disease-carrying mosquitoes. The determination to spray adult mosquitoes at town and school-owned property is based on mosquito surveillance data, disease test results, and weather conditions upon concurrence with town officials. Diseases such as EEE and West Nile virus are found in mosquitoes during the latter part of the summer and early fall. Further communication will be given if emergency spraying is going to take place. Residents who do not want their wetlands treated may use our No Spray registry online at www.dragonmosquito.com/no-spray-registry. Or write to Dragon Mosquito Control, P.O. Box 46, Stratham, New Hampshire, 03885. Be sure to include your name, physical address, phone number, house color, and acreage. Call 603-734-4144 or email help@dragonmosquito.com. For more information on spray dates, location, material, use precautions, or other concerns. Right.
Just a quick question.
You got it.
Greg, when's the last time we actually had to spray? Do you recall? I don't think we've done it in
I believe we
few
spray and
years.
test, and if it gets really bad, we have the extra money for the additional.
Because this is just a test, right? They're not spraying at all. But I know in the past we've had EEE test results that we've had to spray for, but I don't recall when the last time we actually had to spray for that. Just curious if you knew.
Not off the top of my head, no. I mean, I know there, like it says, when larvae are found, treatment may occur, but there's no schedule to conduct emergency spraying.
Right.
It usually seems to be like the end of summer, doesn't it? When you see towns doing the spraying.
Yep.
And that's why we used to have $40,000 in the budget. We did the expendable trust fund to do that emergency spraying so as to not budget for it every year. So,
Right.
So there's still money there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there was no warrant article
Keep going.
to put it back up to that level, so we didn't have to spray last year.
So damn hot, there was no mosquitoes.
Yeah, they all were in Florida. Travel south.
All right, we good on that? All right, next up, Davis Park. I know we're still getting some questions, concerns about what to do out there. Seems like everyone's feels differently. I think the residents around there. So I'm not sure quite where we think we could possibly do anything out there, what we want to do. One idea, maybe try to talk to Danny because he has to plow out there. I wonder if he's got any concerns out there when it comes to plowing.
I think we should table it and then maybe have a public meeting on it and open it up to the people in that neighborhood, because I've heard on the other end of it that there's only a few that have had a problem.
Right, it's, you hear both sides.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but I think it would be good to bring in Danny. So if it does, if it is creating a problem on his end of it, then he can bring that up. at
Yeah.
the meeting.
Yeah, let's say one idea too, because I know it is a pretty narrow street. But I wonder, and Danny would probably know better than anyone else, and I don't know what the expense would be, but if you went like 12 inches in, put like stone dust down just to create a pull-off area, I don't know.
I haven't even got any ideas on it, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. You know,
That's why I'm saying I think we should just table it for now and then see if we can have a public hearing on it.
And just let everyone know in
Yep,
that neighborhood.
everybody in that neighborhood, let them know, give them the, so they'll be able to come here and voice their opinion. Get Danny in here to
Yeah.
answer questions and see what his ideas are. I know, like when we did Walton Road back in the day, he came and we worked it all out and we were able to solve their problems. So.
Yeah, and my thought is too, if you or maybe if you get mostly everybody in the room together,
Yep,
you can come up with a solution.
that's what happened. So I think that
Yeah.
that's what we should do.
Yeah. Any other thoughts or ideas?
sounds good to me.
All right, we'll take a look. We'll schedule that in the next few meetings. Try to get that resolved at some point. Hopefully. All right. Next up, let's take a look at the summer meeting schedule.
I see it ends after the 17th of April, so looks pretty good to me.
Yeah. You want to pick this back up after Labor Day?
Yeah.
All right. So if we look at it, our next meeting would be on the 17th, right, of April.
Right.
Right.
So then following that, we go to
First.
the 8th. Then the 22nd of May. And we'll get into June. That would be June 5th. Then June 19th. And then I think looking at it, we wouldn't go again till July 10th, right? Unless you want to meet the day before the 4th of July.
No.
No, and I think by the time we get to July, we can take another look, or just before the month of July, maybe take another look at that point and say,
It's possible, right?
is it really necessary? Are we coming in just for the sake of a meeting, or
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'd rather, stay like an extra half hour, 45 minutes. And if there's nothing coming up the next time around.
Exactly.
And then if we had to meet, we can always meet. If
Right.
There was something urgent.
This is wonderful for me because when I was on the board, we had to meet every Monday.
Yeah.
So this is like a nice little break.
So then what we'd look at, right, would be July 10th. So I wouldn't see any need to meet on the 17th, right? So then you want to switch, go right to the 24th?
I would.
But then if we don't need a meeting, you mean like just skip that week?
That's right.
Right. If we
And
run
we'll
into
know that by the
something-
10th.
Okay.
Right. So
I
then-
mean, a lot of people are gone the first 2 weeks of July, and it's
You're right. No, yeah.
July's the vacation month.
Right. So then if we go July 24th, then we'll stay on that every other week. Then it would be August 7th and then the 21st.
Works for me.
subject to change.
Is that good, Beth?
Sounds like a plan.
All right. And I don't know if everyone's had a chance to look at the folders. We need to approve the consent agenda. And in there, We had accounts payable manifest for the week of April 6th, 2023. The BOS draft minutes, March 27th, 2023. There was one 2022 administrative abatement request, one application to change a family trust, one notice of intent to cut wood or timber. There were two ZBA appointments, Michael Murray, Jim O'Brien, and one alternate member, Patrick Kiley.
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Darrell, second. Second by Jay. Discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500. All right, Greg. They're up. Town manager's report.
Well, in addition to the water.
Exactly.
It was a very busy week last week with the auditors, trying to get them in and out of 2 days. So, but we pretty much have done it. Thank you to the staff and everybody else that helped make that possible. I've got a small list to follow up, but other than that, we're in good shape from that standpoint. So,
Perfect.
on to the next thing.
Good.
All right. I have a very lengthy water meeting tomorrow with Gene, so.
Make sure you take good notes, because we'll be wanting to hear in 2 weeks.
Absolutely.
All right, selectmen's reports. Tammy,
I
anything?
don't have any right now.
Darrell?
Not a one.
Jay?
Just a couple meetings coming up, energy and if we have a quorum, and planning board, I think is Wednesday, right?
It is Wednesday night.
You don't have one on Wednesday?
No?
No.
All right.
So just to expound on that, energy, we don't have enough people if one person is out for a quorum. We need people on energy. I mean, this is financially, it's a big part of our future, and I can't understand why we can't get people on to be interactive on this board. But I'm just reaching out, letting people know that.
I mean, we can't get people to
we're-
fill other boards.
And I understand that. I've sat on the board, so I have a little zest for it, because I'd like to see solar come into the town, and let's,
Yeah.
aim for our future. So that being said, if we don't get some people to step up, it's going to be another one of those
Yeah.
committees that just dissipates, and it's something we shouldn't lose track of.
I agree.
Yeah, it should be a shame, because you're kind of preliminary looking at like solar panels too out at the old landfill and
Right.
stuff, right?
Yeah, we put a little time and effort into it already, and I mean,
How many people?
look at
how many
just look at
people
your personal bills right now, and look
How
what
many
energy
people you
is.
got?
I don't have the stats off the top of my head, but it's
It's,
3 or 4 of us.
5-member board.
And how many do we have?
Well, we haven't had
3 or
5.
4. Yeah, we haven't had 5 in a while.
So you need 3 for quorum, right?
Yep.
Well, stuff you can get.
But we also have reappointments coming up too, right? I think there's 2 people on the committee for reappointment.
Right.
No.
What about putting it out on the public television, on the community TV? Like, I know like the ZBA
Do it.
does like a posting for alternate members and for new members.
Right.
Maybe that will help.
Maybe
I'll
if
bring
we
it
add-
up on Wednesday. We'll see what we can do about.
If we add something like, what the committee has done, or what they've worked on, what things they're planning to work on, that might
Yeah.
poke people's interest to say,
Yeah.
oh, we want to put a solar field at the landfill.
Maybe some of the
I'd be
trash
happy
people.
to- Maybe some of the trash people, right?
Or Beth. Maybe Beth would like to.
Put a little more on Beth's plate.
You can just put something out on the town Facebook page or something too.
Yep.
Anything and everywhere. And last week, I didn't have anything either. It was a slow week. I think because it was the last week of the month.
Do we know if conservation has a meeting this week? Because they do meet the first.
Yeah, as far as I know, they will have one.
Okay. I just don't know. I haven't heard anything yet.
Let
I
me know
haven't
if
heard
it
that they
happens.
won't have one.
Okay.
And how do we
Be there.
contact the chairs and all the different committees to let them know who's going to be on it?
Well, since this got approved
I
tonight,
wouldn't miss it.
I will email it to Dee and whoever, any other admins that deal with any of the committees.
Okay, perfect. Okay, we've got, just go through a list of some upcoming events coming up. Actually, it's this Friday. Wow, it's Friday's Easter. For this weekend coming up. The toddler egg hunt is this Friday, April 7th, from between 8 and 12. That's what takes place right here at Town Hall. On Saturday is the regular Easter egg hunt. That's between 8 and 11. That starts over, the Easter Bunny, I believe, shows up at the school for the pancake breakfast.
Correct.
Leads the march over here. For anyone who's at that breakfast. With the rabies clinic at the fire department this Saturday as well, between 9 and 1. The Run of the Savages is coming up on Saturday, April 15th, 10 o'clock at Pollard. The town-wide cleanup day is April 22nd, between 8 and 11. And on that here, I know you meet out at the green, and Jen from Recreation will be out there with bags and gloves and everything else. And I know usually when you pick up around town, you just leave the bags there, and then Danny and the crew pick them up.
What day is that?
April 22nd. It's also Earth Day.
Remind us as we get closer, would you?
Yep. And it's also Household Hazardous Waste Day, the Saturday, the following weekend, April 29th, between 9 and 12. And that will be at the Public Works Garage on 144 F Main Street. And for that, you need the proof of residency will be required for anything there. And on the town website, I'm sure we'll have the full list of what you can bring and what you can't bring. There's a whole list.
Speaking of which, Beth, I have not been able to get a hold of Republic for my little wine cooler to get rid of it. I'm an unhappy resident.
Mm-hmm. You're not alone.
Well, it's nice to know you have company.
Yeah.
All right. Anybody else have any other business? Greg, any?
No, sir.
No, sir. All right. So looks like that's it. We'll close the meeting at 6:58.
Happy Easter.
Thank you. Have a good night and happy Easter to everyone.
Happy